Okay, this is our community's house. We are all guests in it to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of council for, I think we're April 17th at 7 o'clock. To start this meeting in a good way, I'm just going to read our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, the Squamish, and the Musqueam peoples on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands. Right out of the gate, we have the adoption of the agenda, and I'm going to propose that we vary the agenda just slightly from what's printed on the page, and that would be, I'd be moving the agenda with the awards ceremony moved to the front end, so switching positions with the public input period. Moved by Councillor Murray, seconded by Councillor Back. Call a question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Council, we do have a set of meeting minutes that have been circulated with the package from the March 27th special meeting. Are there any errors or omissions from those minutes as presented? Hearing none, they're moved by Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder on the matter? Second by Councillor Back. I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. We're now going to move into the Heritage Awards. And to start us off here, let's see here. I do have a bit of a script that's for your protection here so that I stay on target. So good evening and welcome to the 2022 Design Excellence and Community Heritage Awards. Tonight we'll be celebrating design excellence projects and the efforts of individuals or groups involved in promoting and conserving heritage over the past year. As I said when we were out in the hall, it's a very important part of our community to be able to see elements of good design throughout our community, but also retention of heritage pieces that help tell the story of the different neighborhoods and the development in the different neighborhoods. It's all good for everybody to be able to see that. And so the work that you're doing does help to help with the identity of the District of North Vancouver and the histories of our community as well. I very much appreciate everyone being able to join us tonight in celebrating some of the achievements within the community. To begin the awards ceremony this evening, I am honored to have Elder Margaret George from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation join us and offer a traditional welcome. So Elder Margaret, thank you very much for joining us, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to you. And we have some microphones at the central desk there. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. It's such an honor to see the work that each and every one of you are doing. A very difficult time sometimes with the COVID, but I thank each and every one of you for your commitment in following what you promised to do. And sir, you guys, turn my back to you. Just a quick prayer and hopefully more work will be done. Great Spirit, thank you for bringing us together this evening. Just guide each and every one on the path that they're on, the work that they're doing, letting us always remember that we are the leaders and the mentors of those who follow us, those who witness what we do and what we say. I ask Great Spirit to bless the communities from which you come from, your families, and especially the elders and children, all my relations, and thank you again.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Elder Margaret George. Next, we have Mr. Kevin Zhang, he's from our Development Planning Department, staff liaison for the Advisory Design Panel for the presentation of the 2022 Design Excellence Awards. Welcome, Mr. Zhang.
Sorry, are we able to bring the presentation up on screen? Great, thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Elder Margaret George, for the acknowledgement and welcome. My name is Kevin Zhang, Development Planner with the District, and also Staff Liaison to the Advisory Design Panel. Alongside me is Isabel Kim, Community Planner and Staff Liaison to the Heritage Committee. We would like to welcome everyone here tonight for the 2022 Design Excellence and Community Heritage Awards. I would first like to provide some brief background on the work of the Advisory Design Panel and also announce this year's nominees and winners. The Advisory Design Panel is a technical committee made up of experts in the fields of architecture, landscape architecture, public art, inclusivity and accessibility, engineering, development, construction, and public safety. These panel members are volunteers who are all residents of the North Shore and appointed to the panel by council. The panel's mandate is to review all major development applications against district plans, policies, and best design practices, and also to provide staff with advice. On a large scale, it means assisting staff to resolve site planning issues and improving the overall pedestrian experience. And on a smaller scale, it means ensuring that accessible residences are designed to the highest accessibility standards. And in 1992, the panel established the Design Excellence Awards program as a way to recognize and promote design excellence. Over the years, we've had many exemplary projects that have made contributions to our built environment. And at this point, I just want to take a moment to give recognition to our panel members for 2022. For the previous year, our panel members were James Blake, who's the chair, Dawn Ottersley, co-chair of the panel, Nancy Paul, Kevin Bracewell, Nathan Shuttleworth, Brian Newton, Alexis Chacoin, Rajesh Kumar, Kelvin Litt, Jean-Pierre Mahet, and Josh Burnson. We're very lucky to have so many local professionals.
I think it's important for us to thank all of the volunteers for that, their service. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Preempted my my clapping in my notes. Many of these who are all volunteers who spent their time to help shape our communities. Thank you very much. Now moving on to this edition of the awards. Once again, we have a strong field of 8 nominees, all of which are unique in character, well thought out, and important additions to our community. So on the screen, we have Kiwanis Linwoods, which is a non-market seniors housing development in Lynn Valley. Forsman Townhomes, 8 units in the Inter-River neighborhood. Hunter at Lynn Creek, which is a mixed-use residential and institutional use, which contains our new Lynn Creek Community Recreation Center. Creekstone is a care center in Lynn Creek, adjacent to the Fibs Exchange. Bylaw, which is a townhouse development in Lionsgate, adjacent to our new Bylaw Park. Park West, a mixed-use development at the western gateway to the district at Marina Capilano. Handsworth Secondary, a recently completed new high school to replace the former Handsworth Secondary School building. And lastly, Canyon North, 8 townhomes at the top of Capilano Road. And with that, it's my pleasure to now announce the winners for this year. First up, a design award merit is awarded to Kiwanis Linwoods by Kiwanis North Shore Housing Society, Ray Leckman Architects, and ETA Landscape Architecture. This is a 106-unit non-market seniors rental apartment, which is an addition to the adjacent existing Kiwanis Tower in Lynn Valley. The panel specifically congratulates the design team on the site's planning that allowed the building to be well situated between the existing forest and the new open courtyard that you see on screen here. The overall material selection that echoes the design language of the existing, of the recently renovated tower, and the thoughtful location of accessibility features that is important to both existing and new residents. And with your permission, Your Worship, I would like to now invite the project team up to the front to receive their awards and a photograph.
Please do.
More to come. Come on. There we go.
We're gonna have Mayor Smith in the middle, so if you two of you want to go on this side.
More on this side.
Perfect. Great, I'm just squishing a little bit. Perfect, all right. Good, thank you.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you. And the first Design Excellence Award is awarded to Park West by Celtic Development, Raffi Architects, and PFS Studio. This is a mixed-use development at the western gateway to the district on the corner of Capilano and Marine. Key components include 2 towers, a restaurant, a grocery store, public art, a plaza, and improved transit along Marine Drive. The panel specifically congratulates the design team on the site plan and the location of the massing to protect views and to accommodate new pedestrian and vehicle connections. Excellent pedestrian spaces along the transit stop, plaza, and the one-way road. And also the various architectural details that give a relatively large development a more refined sense of scale. Once again, I would like to invite the project team up to the stage.
Perfect, nice and close. Thank you.
Congratulations.
The second Design Excellence Award is awarded to Bylaw by CityMark, Integra Architecture, and once again, ETA Landscape Architecture. This is an 88-unit townhouse in the same neighborhood, just north of the last development. And perhaps the most unique feature of this development is that it wraps the southern and western edges of the new Bylaw Park. The panel specifically congratulates the design team on the successful design interface to the new Bylaw Park, the well-appointed open amenity space in the center of the townhomes, and the many pathways through the site that are coordinated with surrounding developments to ensure that all residents are able to access everything this up-and-coming village center has to offer. And project team, please come up to receive your awards.
You guys are gonna regret me sticking them in shirt. Take them off. Everybody take their stickies off. It's not gonna be a good photo with your name.
Great, because I'm just moving on a little closer to my curtain. Perfect. All right, here we go. Thank you.
The third Design Excellence Award is awarded to Handsworth Secondary School. This is a recently completed secondary school replacement in Upper Edgemont. The panel recognizes the unique set of challenges when designing an institutional project and congratulates the design team on accommodating all the programming needs of a school in an efficient and understated building, the ample amount of covered outdoor unstructured spaces along the south facade, and the incorporation of indigenous design language throughout the interior and exteriors of the development. Once again, I welcome the design team to the front.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the final Design Excellence Award is awarded to Hunter at Lynn Creek by Intergolf, RWA Group Architecture, and PMG Landscape Architects. This development is situated at the heart of our Lynn Creek Town Center, directly south of the updated Sealand Park. It has two major components, the west end being residential towers and townhomes, and the east end being the new Lynn Creek Community Recreation Center. The panel specifically congratulates the design team on the cohesive use of materials that tie together the residential components of the development, the generous use of glazing to articulate the facades and of the community center and take advantage of views north and east, and an overall massing strategy that not only reflects the point towers across the street, but also the mid-rise buildings along Marine Drive. I'm happy to invite the project team once again up to the front. Great, thank you everyone. And that concludes the 2022 Design Excellence Awards. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate all the nominees and award winners tonight, as well as thank the past and present advisory design panel members who joined us this evening. And with your
Kevin. Now we're going to be, congratulations to the winners of this year's Design Excellence Awards. And now we're going to turn it over to Isabel Kim from our Community Planning Department for presentation of the 2022 Community Heritage Awards. And just before we get into this, I'm a former chair of the Heritage Commission myself, and remember how much fun it was to research these different projects and be able to learn about the history of it, and then make all these efforts together with our staff to make sure that the community could retell those stories and carry them forward. It was a great experience, and so looking forward to tonight's presentation. Ms. Kim.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. My name is Isabel Kim, and I am a community planner with the district. Tonight, I have the pleasure of announcing the Community Heritage Awards for 2022. The Community Heritage Awards are presented each year to recognize and honor the efforts of individuals or groups involved in promoting and conserving heritage in the district. These 5 previous award winners from 2020 and 2021 reflect the range and diversity of recognition that is given out each year. The 4 categories for Heritage Awards includes maintenance and restoration of structures, heritage advocacy, heritage landscape preservation and enhancement, and compatible new design in a heritage context. Community Heritage Award recipients are nominated by the public and the district's Community Heritage Advisory Committee, which is comprised of volunteers with expertise or an interest in local history, architecture, building restoration, and heritage conservation. The current committee members are James Paul, who is the current chair, Anne Seville, Alistair Moore, Jennifer Clay, Melanie Montgomery, Rob Griesdale, Trevor Ford, and Councillor Hanson is the current council representative. Here are some photos of the committee in action, visiting heritage sites, attending walking tours, and previous award evenings. The efforts of the Community Heritage Advisory Committee raise the community's awareness of heritage issues and contribute to the preservation and protection of heritage assets.
At this point, we want to definitely express our appreciation to all of the volunteers who serve on those committees. It's a thankless job at times, but the work that you do helps us recognize the history of our community. So thank you very much on behalf of the council.
And here are the Community Heritage Award winners for 2022. 267 West Queens Road for the homeowners' heritage conservation work, and the North Shore Culture Compass project by North Van Arts for their heritage advocacy. This 2022 Community Heritage Award is given to 267 West Queens Road in recognition of their window restoration work to this heritage home. This home, known as the Christie House, was constructed in 1911. The Christie House is valued for its striking Queen Anne turret, stained glass windows, and other notable exterior and interior design features which have made it a prominent landmark on the street. The restoration work consisted of the removal, repairs, reglazing, which used the original glass materials and techniques, and the reinstallation of the original wood windows. This award is presented to owners Mr. Jordan Levine and Ms. Justine Blick for their extensive and thoughtful restoration of this heritage home. With your worship's permission, I would like to invite Mr. Levine and Ms. Blick to come up and receive their award. The next Community Heritage Award is given to North Van Arts for the North Shore Culture Compass project under the Heritage Advocacy category. North Van Arts is a grassroots, nonprofit cultural organization that has been serving the North Shore since 1969, with many projects and events spanning the entire region. Launched in March 2020, the North Shore Culture Compass is a free online map that helps you explore a rich cultural landscape of history, art, and stories. This tool is intended for residents, tourists, urban professionals, and the culture sector to help build audiences, drive tourism, and encourage partnerships to better highlight our rich cultural diversity. The Culture Compass features cultural asset listings across 10 unique categories, including creative and cultural industries, cultural and natural heritage, cultural organizations, cultural spaces and facilities, and First Nations. I encourage everyone to visit www.northshoreculturecompass.ca to view the various listings across the district, such as our very own Capilano Suspension Bridge. This award is presented to North Van Arts. With your worship's permission, I would like to invite Ms. Nancy Powell, Mr. Don Rutherford, and Ms. Anne-Marie Lawrence from North Van Arts to come up and receive their award.
Does one of you want to just come to the other side? No. Perfect, thank you. Thank you.
And here are the 2022 Design Excellence and Community Heritage Award winners. With your worship's permission, I would like to turn this back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You have my permission.
Thank you.
So once again, thank you all so much. This concludes the 2022 Design Excellence and Community Heritage Awards ceremony. Congratulations again to all of the award recipients, and thank you to everyone for joining us in this celebration. The recipients are absolutely welcome to stay through the council meeting, or I believe your reception space is still set up outside, and also Sarah is willing to come and take some more group photos if you'd like out in that space. But thank you so much for coming out tonight. We're going to take about a 2-minute pause so people can move back to the reception if they would like. Thank you so much.
Along Mountain Highway.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to reconvene the regular meeting of council for April 17th. Again, and so at this time, we reserve a period of up to 30 minutes at the front end of each council meeting to hear comments of concern from the public. And people have up to 3 minutes to speak. People have signed up in advance through the clerk's office, and so we're going to work through that list first. But if there's still time, and it looks like there will still be time, then we'll make sure that other people either virtually or here in person can add their comments in that period. I will just say that the meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format, which means that all members of council, the public, the staff can participate in the meeting either in person or virtually. As you can see, we have the full council here in person this evening. Okay, so at this point, we're going to go to the public input period. And the first speaker I have, let's see here, on non-agenda items. So we don't have any speakers here for agenda items. So I'm going to go to John Lesso on non-agenda item. And John is joining us here in person, so welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, Mayor Little, members of council. I'm following up on my previous emails last week with photographs on the loss of 5 businesses on West 15th between Lloyd and Pemberton, primarily due to the ill-advised actions of this district. And they include traffic control at the intersection of Lloyd and West 15th, going from a 4-way stop to a 2-way stop. Changes in parking rules from head-in parking to back-end parking along the north side of 15th, which Councilmember Murray is familiar with. And 3, continued failure of the district to enforce short-term parking regulations, resulting in John Hussar, owner of Van Wonder Auto, being able to store his personal fleet of 9 vehicles permanently without penalty for the past 3 years on public streets, which he continues to do to this day. As of today, there has been one documented collision at the intersection of Lloyd and 15th since the district changed the intersection from a 4-way stop to a 2-way stop. This is per my discussions with Chris Roper at Pemberton Auto this morning. Why you would change a 4-way stop that had been in place for decades to a 2-way stop is irresponsible, and it endangers the public. John Hussar continues to park his private vehicles on 15th and surrounding side streets, which eliminates customer parking and surrounding businesses, which include Aero Rentals, Daisy's Cafe, Sal's Auto Repair, Linus Industries, and Computer Guy Sales and Service. In summary, you have over the past 2 years made changes that have driven 5 businesses and counting out of the area. There was no consultation with any of these 5 businesses prior to making these changes. At the very least, you should have directed your staff to pull the business on 15th prior to making any changes in traffic control and parking direction. Why didn't you do this? Were you too eager to hop on the bicycle path bandwagon along with West Vancouver? Because in fact, you have plenty of bicycle lanes on either side of West Vancouver or West 15th on Marine Drive and south of 15th. But apparently you want more. And it means sacrificing businesses to push your politically correct green agenda. You are more than willing to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lesso. Okay.
Excuse me, I also want to leave this photograph here of a very simple solution that I had proposed at a previous meeting. It involves a tow-away zone from 11 to 6 a.m., which is enacted by the Corporation of Delta.
If it's It's in the
very
tray. It'll be
effectively.
shared with all of council. So thank you very much. Okay, I have no further speakers signed up ahead of time, so I'm going to check in with the room. Would anybody else like to address the council? And I believe I see a virtual attendee, Hazen Colbert. Can we make sure Hazen Colbert can be moved over as a panelist? And again, we will have ample time for additional speakers today as well. Mr. Colbert, can you hear me? You are muted. There we go. Mr. Colbert, can you hear me?
I can. As a French Canadian, I respectfully acknowledge the original settlers of Canada and the original Canadians in Canada, specifically Jacques Cartier and Samuel de Champlain, which I think you all know, but also Pierre de Monts, who you may not know, as the genuine original Canadians in Canada. I now move on to away from my land acknowledgement that all land in Canada belongs to French Canadians, to speak to two subjects. But before I do that, I have to say that the last speaker, who I do not know, is actually very correct in his statements, only because the person that owns the business Computer Guys, his name is Mark. Not only is Mark my friend, not only is his family my friend, but I also rely on him. And everything that Mr. Lesso said about the Computer Guys is absolutely correct. And Mark and I have discussed it for almost 3 years. Now, what I'd like to ask council, in fact, specifically if the CFO is there, is I am confused about a subject. That subject is that both the artificial turf fields and the, let me address the artificial turf fields first. A number of those artificial turf fields were planned in 2018 and they were budgeted for in 2018, but they didn't happen in 2018. And as a result of that, the dollars for their budget were moved from the budget into the surplus for 2018. So why then in 2023 do we actually budget within the operating budget for 2023/24 for a project which, because it wasn't completed in 2018, was transferred into a surplus? It would seem to me that that project should be financed entirely from the operating surplus. Secondly, a related question is that the bike lane project is clearly a capital expenditure. It's not an operating expenditure, it's a capital expenditure, and therefore it should come from the capital expenditure funds. Now there's a little red thing that's flashing. I would like council to answer these questions now to save me from getting into my vehicle, driving over there and making a scene. So please try. That's all. You're dismissed.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Colbert. The next speaker I have.
Oh, no, you don't. We're not done. What are the answers to the question?
Oh, this is an opportunity for the public to share their concerns with us. I'm sure we can have people follow up. I'd be happy to connect with you, Mr. Colbert, and address those as best I can. I do not have the CFO present in the council meeting. The only thing I could address on the spot is that I believe the funds that were taken from the Inter-River field were not put into surplus. They were put in to produce the artificial turf field at Argyle. And so, but other than that, I don't have answers for you on the spot. And we're going to have to follow up after the meeting. Sorry. The next speaker that I have is John Harvey joining us virtually. Can we make sure that John is able to move over as a panelist? Just takes a moment to transfer people over sometimes. Mr. Harvey, can you hear me? And it says on our system that you're muted. Oh, there we go. Can you hear me, Mr. Harvey?
I can, Mayor Little, thank you very much.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
It's just a matter of that I only found out yesterday that on Thursday is going to be the first for a long, long time of the North Van Policing Committee meeting, which is going to be held down at the City Hall. Way back, I've tried to say that nothing has been advertised about this in the newspaper. If I go to Lynn Valley Library, the RCMP have a thing on the wall where you can read everything and all this. Nothing of this is about anything to do with the meeting, which is supposed to be taking place on Thursday, I think about 9 to 11 o'clock. So could that be happen? There's supposed to be, it says in there's a terms of reference or something like that, how the meeting is conducted or attended to or worked out from the city website, but I haven't seen it, that type of thing. I've got a complaint with the RCMP down there, which is I'm hoping to get resolved. I'm very, very much unlikely. And I wish Surrey with RCMP change. I wish them well, and possibly in the future, both Burnaby and North Van may follow suit. We've already got one in Alberta of Grand Prairie, where their city council of 9, 8 of them are voting to change from the RCMP there. So we've got an acting, I believe, superintendent now because the other one left or was removed. He has kindly met me, spoken to me. I give him 10 out of 10 for that. But to follow through with the complaint with him, I can only give him 1 out of 10. So I'm going to suggest, from my point of view, that this acting superintendent is not going to be the superintendent of North Vancouver. I don't think I've got anything else to say about this, Mayor and Council, and I thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. And you do raise a good point about the publishing of the police committee. What I will just say is that the policing committee has, as a part of its terms of reference, they're to have 2 public meetings per year, and then they're allowed to have other meetings that are not public. And this is an opportunity for the OIC to brief the police committee members. So the one that's coming up on Thursday is not one of the public meetings. When we do have a public meeting, you are quite correct. It's to be notified 3 weeks in advance and to make sure that people are aware of an opportunity to give feedback to the police committee. But this one is one of the ones that is not does not have a public input component.
Mayor Little, that originally was 4 meetings at a minimum. This is somehow thrust into and is completely inappropriate. It just doesn't serve the North Van City and District public as it should do.
Yeah.
Needs a complete amendment. Sorry.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, I don't see any further speakers at, oh, yes, please. Nicole Hebert, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Little and council members. I just kind of had a little comment because I've been curious why there's not very many young families that are interested or come to these meetings. And even though they're virtual on Zoom, I think it's still a challenge. I'm just wondering if you guys have ever had like childcare available on Monday evenings so that family members could come and they could trust their kids to have a nice fun time while they come and sit and listen. I'm just wondering if that's ever been an option or if it's something that could be considered.
Thank you very much. I don't think it has been, but that's for council members to request. Is there a public one? Okay.
I would just love to see that. I'd love to see that. I'd even go on a volunteer basis to be with the kids as a children's entertainer. I would more than willing to do that.
We'll look into it. Thank you very much. Okay. And I see Corey Koss joining us virtually. Can we make sure that Mr. Koss is brought over as a panelist? Dr. Cost, can you hear me?
Yes, your worship, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me and even see me.
I can hear and see you. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, your worship. I think my remarks will be very short. I wanted to concentrate a little bit on what was said at the workshop just preceding the regular meeting of council. The subject matter was diverse, but it seemed to concentrate on short-term rentals. So I wanted to get a feel for what some of the issues are. So I thought it might be useful to ask, let's say, 4 questions to a chat GPT platform, explicitly chat.openai.com, which I frequent fairly often. So I asked it 4 questions. Are there effective steps that municipalities can take to control short-term rentals? And I came back with about 7 suggestions. They were all very good ones. Second question, are there effective steps municipalities can take to ban short-term rentals? A slightly different nuanced question from the first one. And again, about 6 or 7 steps were outlined. Third question, what are the negative impacts of allowing short-term rentals? What are the negative impacts? And again, it came back and answered about 7 negative impacts. Each one, however, to this point, had a series of caveats that municipalities differ, for example. And finally, to do with tourism. Does tourism benefit all citizens of a community? It seems to be that council feels that tourism is good for the municipality on the whole, but is that really true? And what can you do to compensate for some of them that are suffering as a consequence of tourism? So I just wanted to remark that there are means and ways to ask questions to a wide-ranging search engine to address complex questions like this, and I hope that council and staff maybe can partake of these tools that are out there. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for your comments, Dr. Cost. Okay, I see no further speakers at this time, so I'm going to return to the agenda items. I normally propose a consent agenda at this time. We really only have 1 item up for adoption. The others are up for really their first time having the discussion, so I'm not going to propose a consent agenda at this time. The first item, 8.1, this is amendments to the use of voting recorders at elections, and this is up for adoption, no further debate, and so I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those, oh, sorry, moved by Councillor Murray, second by Councillor Ma. Call question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Next item is item 8.2, expanding the Inter-Municipal Transportation Network Service Business License Scheme to Hope, Kent, and Mission. I don't know, we have a comment from staff on this, but when we were initially allowing ride-hailing services, the way the bylaw was written, it didn't really allow us to add new communities to it. And so that's really the purpose of this, is largely housekeeping to extend the program to areas that were not a part of the original. Mission, I will say, Mission was actually part of the original discussion and just couldn't come to a decision on it. So they ended up being left out of the original one. And so now we have to bring in a replacement bylaw entirely to cover that. I will also say that one of the communities, all of the community partner communities are going to be seeing the exact same wording of this legislation, so we don't have an ability to alter it. And there was an addenda that was posted as well, just someone caught an error in it. And so the addenda is to cover and make sure that all the municipalities have the newly worded piece, and that's captured in the addenda to 8.2.
So moved.
It is moved by Councillor Murray. Is there a second? Councillor Ma, any comments on the matter?
No.
Councillor Ma, comments? Okay, Councillor Back, I know I saw your hand go up. Well, I will just say that I think that ride hailing has become quite disruptive in some ways, but also an integral service for people in our community. Um, you know, I have always had a little bit of trepidation about fully opening up the ride hailing service because I was worried about the effect it would have on the taxi services because for persons with the disabilities in our community, they are absolutely reliant on properly trained drivers to be able to come and do pickups for them. And the taxi community had actually made quite a commitment. They go and do work with the Justice Institute to make sure that they know how to properly and safely handle persons with disabilities and get them into their cabs. And so I was worried that this would have a very negative impact on that. We did see the temporary suspension of services during COVID. There wasn't enough business. They didn't have a workaround model to accommodate distancing within them. And so we did lose the taxi service for a bit of a time, but it has now resumed in the community. I will also say for persons with disabilities, there's a significant commitment from TransLink to increase the number of service hours to HandyDart. And HandyDart actually still hasn't recovered from its pre-COVID levels. And so there are actually ample and available service hours for the HandyDart service in the community right now. Which is great because it allows a lot more flexibility and a little more spontaneity. One of the problems with the HandyDart service in the past was that you really had to book it 2 weeks in advance and it was very inflexible. And so if you wanted to go see a movie one night or something else like that, it wasn't a very good layer of service. And so that's where they would rely on the taxis. And now in many cases, people are using the ride hailing service. So happy to support this. Glad to see it extended into other communities. Like I said, many of the negative concerns at the outset have not really come to pass. And so I'll be supporting this recommendation. Anybody else like to address it? Okay, I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries.
So moved.
Councillor Muir, you're looking at you're concerned that I'm making a meal out of a morsel here.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything.
All right, well, the next item that we have is item
8.3.
8.3. This is the Centennial Bursary Trust Fund. We do have representatives from finance here today. Mr. Danilak, would you like to make a comment on this?
Sorry, this
Technology.
technology is not working. Thank you, Your Worship. The bursaries are granted annually following an established process. The recommendation is to award 14 students from the District of North Vancouver an $840 bursary. A selection process would follow with the awards distributed later this September. The awards are partially funded by the Centennial Bursary Trust Fund and partially funded by council contingency.
So the original bursary was managed, I believe it was Van City that originally managed it, and it had a rock solid agreement written on it. The problem is it was done in $1958, and so $300 for your schooling was considered to be quite a generous bursary. And so as time got on, they didn't want to manage it anymore. It got transferred to the District of North Vancouver to be managed. And we've taken the position that we're going to run out the existing fund by issuing it many more students. And we're also topping up the amount that goes out because frankly, $300 doesn't buy maybe a textbook or two at university. And so so the municipality does top this up. But the intent is by about 2030 that this bursary will have run its course and will be completed. That's right. More than. It was 1958 is when it was struck, I think. So and then we'll have to see what other options there are for the council to support students. But I'm happy to support the proposal. I'll be moving the recommendation, seconded by Councilor Murray. Is there any other comments on the matter? Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. Next item we have up is item 8.4. This is the development permit 52.19 405 to 475 Marie Place, and we do have some comments and presentation from the staff. Mr. Veers, we have you here. Would you like to make some comments on the matter?
Thank you, Your Worship. I will. I have a PowerPoint, Mr. Clerk, that I can share. Is that possible?
Yeah, you can share the screen.
Your worship, members of council, before you tonight is an application for a development permit to develop 9 single-family properties from 405 to 475 Marie Place for a residential multifamily development. Council approved a rezoning of the site and sale of a 5-meter strip of Marie Place in July 2022 to accommodate the project alongside the applicant's other mixed-use project on the adjacent property at 1510 Crown Street. The site plays a significant role in contributing to the town center vision through the construction of the new commercial lane, dedication of 2 parcels for the future expansion of Marie Place Park, a $500,000 cash contribution towards the construction of the green spine and park expansion, and $2.5 million in community amenity contributions. The proposal now requires council's consideration of the development permit presented before you tonight. This proposal consists of 2 6-story buildings located above a 1.5 level underground parking garage. There are 140 strata units in 2 buildings, and they are a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom layouts. There's a slight clarification to the information in the staff report related to the housing mix. The report identifies 56 1-bedroom, 61 2-bedroom, and 23 3-bedroom units when it should actually indicate 50 1-bedroom, 72 bedroom, and 23 bedroom units in accordance with the development permit drawings. The proposal is fully compliant with all the relevant plans, policies, and guidelines for the site, with the exception of the need for 3 minor variances to accommodate an electrical substation. The need for the substation emerged after rezoning in response to the increased electrical demands of an entirely fossil fuel-free building. The variances include 2% increases to the site and building coverage regulations and an 8.1 foot variance to the west setback. Staff are supportive of the proposed variances as they are minor in nature, support a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions for the building, and are in line with the goals of the district's adopted community energy and emission plan. In addition, the alternate scenarios explored to accommodate the substation are neither feasible or would negatively impact the design and livability of the project. A couple of things to highlight before I close. I wanted to reassure council that residents of Marie Place will continue to have access to their homes throughout the construction period and for as long as it is needed. In addition, staff will ensure that all construction-related impacts are considered through the review and approval of a construction traffic management plan prior to issuance of a building permit. Staff will not issue the BP until we are satisfied with that plan. Thank you, and that concludes my introduction. Staff recommend approval of development permit 5219. As I mentioned, it contributes to the OCP vision for Lynn Creek, the delivery of the new commercial lane, facilitation of the green spine, and expanded Marie Place Park, and a substantial cash community amenity contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beers. So I'll be moving the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Back. Just comments on these development permits. If they've met the technical needs of it, then we should not be unduly withholding issuance of the permits. And so in my view, they have met the requirements. And so I'll be supportive of the issuance of the permit. Councillor Back, any further comments?
Not really, Your Worship. There hasn't been any significant changes since the public hearing on this particular application, so I am supportive.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. Just bearing down on the substation, which is the 3 variances that enable this electrical substation. Can you talk at all about whether there's going to be any noise emitting from this, or whether there's going to be any other broader impact with respect to the substation? Thank you.
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Hanson, I believe is identified in the email circulated to council prior to the meeting. The applicant and design team had anticipated that there will be some sound emitted from the equipment in the substation, and the design has followed suit to try to mitigate the sounds associated with that equipment, and that includes locating the building or the structure away from the suites. It's located on top of the parking structure, concrete slab, and is encased in a concrete building. And any of the associated HVAC systems with the electrical substations have been built into the structure itself, so they're not exposed or on the exterior of the building. So in summary, all of the potential noise emitting factors have been reduced through the design of the building. And there is an acoustic consultant as part of the design team, and they are able to make further recommendations once this building has been built. And if there continue to be noise issues at that time, they can look at other ways to reduce those impacts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Murray?
What happens if they can't mitigate it? And is there vibration connected with this substation at all?
Regarding the question about can't, I think there's a number of options that they can try before that would be determined. In terms of vibrations, I believe there may be some vibrations, but given that the building is located away from any of the residential suites on top of the parking structure, it's not anticipated to create any problems. And I believe there's insulating materials between the equipment and the actual base of the building, so it will mitigate any vibrations that would be pushed down into the building.
And what's on the other side of this commercial lane, or what will be on the other side?
Through your worship to Councillor Murray, the other side of the lane is the applicant Fairborn's other mixed-use commercial project, and immediately across the lane would be the parking courtyard. So there's an extensive setback from the edge of the other property on the west side of the lane to the building face itself. It is separated by a parking area and drive aisles.
Are there examples of substations like this that are attached to residential buildings on the North Shore?
I believe that this is really a very large pad-mounted transformer, in which we do see those around on pretty much all of the district's multifamily projects. They tend to be a little bit smaller. This one is larger to meet the electrical needs as identified in the report, and it's also been designed to fit in with the design of the building, the character of the overall building. So in a way, it's less of a visual impact to the forming character of the building than you would see with a lot of other pad-mounted transformers, which have gotten quite large in recent projects. And so this is a nice way to deal with the visual potential visual disruption of that equipment.
We've had a letter recently from a resident in the Bosa development up in Lynn Valley, bringing to our attention the issue of their heat pump and the fact that the heat pump doesn't work below a certain temperature, and that they have been, and several other owners in the building, a suggestion has been made that they actually buy a secondary heat source, because the heat pumps do not work when it gets very cold. And there's some challenges with the building, I understand too, as far as drafts go. So what, like, are we looking at creating policy in regards to these kinds of systems that need to be put in place to accommodate all of these electrical needs? And how are we dealing with heat pumps that indeed are not operating below a certain temperature during the winter time?
Your worship.
Going to take that one on.
Mr. Veers?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Murray, I can't comment on the heat pumps in the Bosa development, and I understand they do have a certain efficiency at different temperatures, and it could be as simple as speccing a different type of unit that would work in our climate better than what was previously specified at the time of building.
And are we looking at a policy to accommodate these kinds of substations as we move forward with, more efficient buildings, albeit there are challenges to all of this, as we know? Is there going to be a policy, or is it going to be a one-off? I know over the years we've had some challenges simply with generators that have been offering electrical assistance during power outages and the challenges that we've had with those. With vibrations in the neighborhoods, we have one documented case in Edgemont that's quite severe for a family, and then we've had single family issues with generators. No guidelines as far as baffling, as far as siting on the lot, and how, equipment like this and substations like this are going to impact, like, for this one, it's across the street from a parking lot. So, the impact, we hope, will be not as significant. We don't really know what kind of impact it's going to be. And, there should be some sort of, statement made to those buying, to understanding what they're getting themselves into if they're living above this kind of facility. But should we not start looking at some sort of policy document to regulate these kinds of things and make sure that they're not impacting, neighbors in the future?
I don't know if that's rhetorical or.
Well, I
mean,
just
all-
think
I
it's
think the
a,
question's to us.
yeah, I think we have
but-
to ask ourselves this question, and maybe staff can bring something forward in the future. And I think it's really important as we are implementing heat pumps in all of these buildings that are being approved, that we actually make sure they're going to do what they're supposed to do, which is keep people warm in the wintertime. And as our climate changes, I think we really have to take a close look at that. It's a significant cost to add a second heat source or indeed replace. It's all well and good that there may be another spec that may be more appropriate, but who's going to take on that cost? The strata, the property owner? Those are all things that we're going to have to work through during this evolution of design and development. And how are these challenges going to be addressed? Not, oh, well, we heard these concerns and complaints and we didn't do anything about it. I think we need to be proactive rather than reactive going forward.
It's absolutely fair, Councilor Mayor. I don't know that it hinges on the issuance of the development permit today, but I think you're absolutely right. In extreme heat and extreme cold, we need to make sure that the peak power consumption in these transformers can handle additional cooling and additional heating in
Yeah.
order to make sure that they're resilient through an emergency.
Absolutely.
I think that's totally fair, but
I was just going to add to Mayor Little, because so often new councillors are just told where their seats are. Here's your name tag, and we're going to give you a business card. But on a development, what we're doing here, the development permits, so the zoning has already been determined, and that decision has already been made. But these are the details of what that zoning is going to create. So there's opportunity to discuss access, issues around the permit itself. There is some movement, although it is not within our purview unless there was something done that was contrary to the zoning. We could not defeat it. There's certainly an opportunity to discuss issues that pertain to how the development is laid out, and ask questions and make changes or amendments to it if we see fit.
yeah, and that's fair. If the council on, not specifically this permit, but on any permit decided not to issue, we'd probably have to be pretty specific about what we thought the shortcoming was in order to be able to assist moving towards issuance. And also staff can advise us as to what's appropriate and inappropriate in that case. But I see Councillor Pope, sorry.
Thank you. I realize that all these decisions have been made prior to my arrival and in the rezoning process, and I'm not here to hold it up. But I do want to say that I am really disappointed that this development has nothing in it for affordable housing. So it's a whole bunch more stratas that will be at market, selling at market rate. And it's actually not going to improve our housing crisis in the District of North Vancouver at all. So that is disappointing to me. And I'm wondering if, following up on a letter that we received from Kelly Bond, who's here tonight as well, I note that $2.5 million in community amenity contributions is in the fund. And I'm wondering, is there any part of the process that that money can now, has that been allocated already? Or can that money now be allocated to Affordable Housing Reserve Fund of some sort?
Okay, Mr. Beers, do you have a comment on that?
I think I'll ask Mr. Milburn if he can respond to this one.
Milburn?
Thank you, Worship. And again, not necessarily a matter for the consideration of a form and character development permit, but we'd be happy to get back with council on more information. Ultimately, it's council's discretion as to how these community amenity contribution dollars are spent, and that's allocated through the annual budget process. And certainly affordable housing is one of the, and I would say probably the most important component for which community amenity contributions continue to be invested in. So the answer is yes, but it's a development permit itself couldn't affect that change. So it'd be a conversation to come back on a subsequent date.
I think I'd also like to add that the two proposals, so the immediate adjacent property, they were brought through concurrently, and the other project does have a significant amount of rental built into it. And so at the time they were discussed, they were both open at the same time when we were having the discussion. This one had a significant letdown of land being contributed to the municipality as well, but you're absolutely right. Specifically, this one does not have those kinds of elements, but the two projects were presented concurrently, and the other project in it does. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanson, I have you again. Was that additional time, or was that from before? Thank you. Councillor Forbes, your comments?
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I just had a clarification I wanted to ask. Some of my other comments I was going to make have already been brought up. The bicycle parking, is that on each level of the 6 levels? Did I read that correctly?
Through your worship to Councillor Forbes, yeah, that's correct. Bike parking for each of the units is located on the level of each level of the building.
And that they would access that by the regular elevator that the other tenants use to go to their units?
Yep, that's correct. And my understanding from the transportation department is that it's actually a preferential way to store bikes, easier to get access to them, more secure, and the users tend to prefer that approach than going into a parking garage underground to get their bikes.
Thank you. I just had a couple of my own comments, and I realize we're at the development permit stage, so it's kind of been dealt with, but I just want to make my own comments again, and I concur with Councillor Pope that this is 140 units there, but it's strata. And the last council was trying really, really hard to get rental and certainly affordable. And I have asked the question, can we actually put in the housing agreements with developers that we can actually have them not just say affordable housing, but actually put in a definite percentage below market. And so I'd certainly like to see that done in our housing agreements going forward. I'm assuming that it doesn't specifically say that. I guess this is a clarification again. The vehicle charging, I'm assuming that's level 2?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Murray, additional comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. We lost that vote in regards to incorporating any affordable housing in this project. And it was very unfortunate. Out of 140 units, you become a little bit stunned that you couldn't find a few spots for not non-market, because that's, as we know, not affordable either, but certainly something below that. But I think you brought up a good point, Councillor Pope, and can we look at the amenity contributions and how those amenity contributions are, where they're put in place? And I will just remind council that, and Mr. Milburn talks about, it's up to council's discretion and it's through the budget process, but the budget process is a complex document. And it's not quite as easy as getting a list of, getting an amount of money that we have a meeting with that we're going to start divvying out into projects that we're interested in. It doesn't work like that. And I'll cast your eyes to a recent discussion that we've had in regards to sports fields. And if you looked in the budget, the deferrals of sports fields, one of them was Inter-River. And we had funded through amenity contributions, the replacement of, partial replacement of Sealand with daycare and additional bathrooms in Sealand Park. But that money also could have been pushed forward to Inter-River Field because it was in the general area. So I think the issue of amenity contributions needs to be brought back for a workshop so we can start talking about this in advance of next year's budget or this year's budget going into next year. So the council understands how exactly these funds are divvied out and what role we actually play in it.
We do have planned workshops on both development cost charges and CACs coming up in the calendar. Okay, I see no further hands at this time, so I'm prepared to call the question. Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries and the permit is issued. Thank you, Council. Next item that we have is item 8.5, Regional Growth Strategy Adoption and Next Steps. I will just say before we go to the presentation from Mr. Smith, the Regional Growth Strategy, once it's adopted by Metro Vancouver, then it has to go through sort of ratification by a few mechanisms, one specifically being a regional context statement, where the District of North Vancouver has to sort of agree to how this is going to apply to our area. Today's report is just for information. It's not a decision point, but I thought it'd be a great opportunity for us to learn a little bit more about that process. So, Mr. Smith, welcome.
Thank you, through your worship. Thank you for this opportunity to provide an update to Council on the recent adoption of Metro 2050, an updated regional growth strategy for the region. Metro 2050 is a high-level land use plan for the region. It was adopted in February 2023 after over 4 years of development and consultation. As part of the adoption process, all affected local governments were required to accept it prior to adoption, and the district did so in June of 2022. As a result of Metro 2050 being adopted, all affected local governments, including the district, now have 2 years to revise their regional context statements, or RCS. An RCS is part of the OCP, and it outlines the relationship between an OCP and Metro 2050, and if required, also how the OCP will be brought in line over time with Metro 2050. District staff intend to begin work on a revised RCS later in 2023, and the revised RCS will require an OCP amendment and acceptance by Metro Vancouver prior to adoption. There will be opportunities for public engagement on the RCS as part of the OCP amendment process. The district did express concerns with some policies in Metro 2050 during its development. Metro Vancouver has addressed most of these concerns, though the inclusion of Maplewood as part of the major transit growth corridor concept remains unresolved. The district has received assurances from Metro Vancouver staff that this can be resolved through the RCS process. It should also be noted that when Council accepted Metro 2050 in June 2022, it passed a companion motion requesting an early amendment to Metro 2050 to better address climate change and ensure better integration of climate change throughout Metro 2050. The Metro Vancouver Board has passed a resolution directing Metro Vancouver staff to undertake this type of amendment. That concludes my brief comments, and staff are available if there are any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray, will you be moving a motion?
I'll move the recommendation.
Moving the receipt. Is there a seconder on receipt? I'll second on receipt. Councillor Murray, your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Little. So the two councils, I believe it was Surrey and Port Moody, those were the ones that.
It was actually the city of Surrey and the township of Langley.
Oh, township of Langley, pardon me, my mistake. That were the two outliers on Metro 2050. And I guess I would just say that, you know, in regards to your last comments, in regards to climate change and how we're managing this region and how we're moving forward, I think are going to be really pertinent discussions at the board level, certainly at the TransLink board as well. And I think it's something that we've always been concerned about, and it is the continuation of sprawl throughout the region. It's important to note that the land use plans for this plan have not changed in decades. They are still the same land use plans, and yet we are trying to, look at development and planning with a very different lens. And yet those land use plans still continue. This board, this new board that's been in place for not quite 4 months, will be adopting this recommendation. It was the previous board that, were in charge before, and they're two quite different machines right now. And the discussions are becoming more complex and more intense. How do we move forward? Looking at the issue of affordability. I always go to Mayor Hurley's quote in the Vancouver Sun just over a year ago, when he said that if supply and demand worked, then the city of Burnaby would be one of the most affordable municipalities to live in. And in fact, it's one of the most expensive municipalities to live in. So it's that that balance between protecting land use, and we talked about it earlier in regards to industrial land, how important it is to protect that. Our farmland, how important it is to protect that to create food security going forward. The increase in population and the unaffordability of living in Metro Vancouver right now is a very big challenge for people. So there's going to be lots of very good discussion in regards to this document and how we move forward. And it's already begun. And I hope the district plays a really critical role in, raising those very important parts of what we know, because we were a municipality built on sprawl, and how we're trying to pivot away from that as we densify our town centers. So thank you, Mayor Little.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Well said. I don't have additional comments. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Just focusing a little bit on this major transit corridor, major transit growth corridor issue for Maplewood. And I appreciate your comments, and your report addressed this by saying we have some confidence that this issue can be addressed. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about that, what the basis of your confidence is, because I mean, from my perspective anyway, we've heard a lot about the densifications that are going to take place in Maplewood. There's the issue of Tsleil-Waututh development in addition in the area, and the major transit growth corridor. The improved transit to the area is rather central from my point of view to the development of Maplewood. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the prospects of achieving this goal of the district and having Maplewood determined a major transit growth corridor. Thank you.
Through your worship, I'd be happy to address those concerns or that question. Just by way of background, the major transit growth corridor concept is one of the newer policies in the Metro 2050. And it basically is looking to identify corridors that would be in line with Transport 2050. And so fostering that relationship with TransLink in terms of the two regional land use and transportation plans. So they tried to identify those corridors where TransLink was looking to make major transit investment. And so in support of that, they identified land uses that would support transit. And so that's how they're trying to work in tandem. The major transit growth corridor, and why staff currently are confident that we will be able to include Maplewood as part of it, does have criteria in terms of what they're looking for in terms of densities and land uses in that. And through discussions with Metro Vancouver staff, they weren't aware of the extent of the planning that the district has undertaken for Maplewood and some of the growth that they envision there. And it was kind of after the fact, and the draft at that point with Metro 2050, they weren't looking to make land use map changes, but saw that they had missed that information. So they gave us assurance that if we include that as part of our RCS, that Maplewood is part of the major transit growth corridor, and identify that on the map, that they will then pick that up through a subsequent amendment after they accept our RCS.
Thank you, Councillor. I see Councillor Murray, Councillor Forbes first time.
Whoops. Thank you, Your Worship. I had a little bit of intrepidation the first time the 2050 Metro 2050 plan came around. I have some of the same concerns still. I'm worried about us losing some of our local autonomy because as you read this report, we have 2 years in which to get our OCP in line with their regional plans. Now, some of the things that are listed here, I think we've already done, or we're certainly along the way to doing. But it just, I don't know, we have the provincial government now saying we have to agree with what they want. And now we have this coming on the Metro plan as well. And I really do have concerns, and I don't believe, I'm not saying that they won't eventually do it, but I'm not going to hold my breath when they've already fallen through on the Maplewood Village concern that we had the first time round. So unless when we look at this in further discussions, because this is just acceptance, no decision, correct? That's what I said, acceptance. So I just want us to really discuss it really good and make sure that any concerns we have, we get them addressed, not promised down the road or in the future, because sometimes we've had promises made to us that aren't kept by other bodies. I'm not saying that Metro will do that, but I'm just concerned about that. So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray, additional comments?
When are we going to begin the process to review the Maplewood plan? When's that starting?
I don't know that we have a date in mind. Local area plan refreshes are fairly staff intensive. I think we don't have anything currently on the books planned for a Maplewood area refresh.
And why is that? We've been talking about it for some time. So the last council talked about it in the beginning of the first year. And now that we're getting closer to understanding the changes in that area with other partners, what's the timeline for it?
Mr. Milburn?
Your Worship, I'd be happy to bring that to the city manager's attention with respect to council's priority conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming back to some of Councillor Forbes' concerns, it is a local government requirement that we respond within 2 years of adoption of the RGS with a revised RCS. And I think it's important to also note the language in the Local Government Act with regards to the content of an RCS. It's not a direct alignment. We don't have to follow word for word what is in the RGS. The RCS simply needs to show the relationship that we have with that. And the OCP, when it was adopted in 2011, was developed very much in mind with Metro 2040, the previous regional growth strategy. And so the OCP is quite aligned already with Metro 2040 and 2050 land use policies. So I don't foresee many issues in terms of developing a new regional context statement that will align with Metro 2050.
I think it was the other way around though. Our OCP came up before.
You're right, yes.
Yeah. No, they basically copied word for word, and that's how it got passed. I remember Johnny Carline coming into the council meeting saying, but we did exactly what was in your OCP that you just passed. And so, yeah, but yeah. Thank you very much. I see no further speakers at this time. So prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? The report is received. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Last item of this evening's agenda is item 8.6. This is the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. Ms. Dickens not available with us today, but I understand Ms. Walker, you will make some comments. Is that correct?
My apologies. Through your worship, unfortunately, Ms. Dickens is unavailable, and we will not be able to provide a briefing today on this item.
Okay. It's pretty self-explanatory to me, and so I don't know that we have to delay it waiting for a staff report, but are there any questions that would cause you to not be able to vote on this tonight? Okay, so I'm prepared to move the staff recommendation, seconded by Councillor Murray. No additional comments. This is just normal for us to pursue this, and I'm supportive of it. Councillor Murray, any further comments? Okay, any other member of council wishing to discuss the matter? Hearing none, I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Council, we're done a little bit early this evening from our scheduled time. Are there any reports that members of council or Mr. Stewart would like to make? Mr. Stewart, just check in with you. Are you still online with us?
Yes, I am, Your Worship, and I have no other comments. Thank you.
You have no reports to make? Okay.
No.
Yeah, I don't know that I have any specific reports to make either. Because I mean, we had this, it was a lot of fun on Saturday. I had a ton of fun on Saturday doing the opening of several baseball seasons. And so I think I was at 10:45 doing an opening pitch with North Shore Baseball, and then a half hour later at McCartney Park for the opening of North Shore Girls Fast Pitch, and then a half hour after that down at Myrtle Park for the opening of Mount Seymour Little League. So I'm happy to say I was 3 for 3 this time, you know, which is much better than past outings. It's some embarrassing situations in Lynn Valley where I hit the tent and the ball went everywhere. Oh, yeah, thank you. Well, I had covered, fortunately, though, I will just add this to the report slightly. I wanted to express my appreciation to Mike Danks from North Shore Rescue when I was not able to be there for the Lynn Valley Little League 2 weekends ago, because my wife and I decided to go away for the weekend. He was able to step up and cover that, and so he did the ceremonial opening pitch for Lynn Valley Little League at that time. And that went very well. But it was exciting to see. Registrations are up across all those agencies for young players. And the weather held off for the ceremony, but it didn't hold off much longer than that. So they did have a bit of a rainy day on Saturday to start the season, but didn't dampen the spirits. They were all there, and the lineup to get hot dogs was so big I couldn't stick around to wait for it. So they had a lot of fun. Would anybody else on council like to make a report? Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm pleased to report on the meeting of the Metro Vancouver Indigenous Relations Committee that occurred on April the 6th, 2023. 2 items that I'll report on. First, we had the annual report from the Chief Commissioner, BC Treaty Commissioner Celeste Haldane. Some very positive news. There's 39 tables currently under negotiation. Currently, there's been 8 treaties arrived at. There's 5 treaties, I suppose. This is the point in terms of the report. She is predicting 5 treaties will be accomplished in the coming year, which would bring then a total of 13 completed treaties. And this was on the 30th anniversary of the commencement of the treaty process. So the observation there is that the treaty finalization process is getting underway, and one would expect in the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to see a lot of treaties across British Columbia. We saw something in the media recently about this, a couple of treaties achieved recently. I also wanted to report that rising out of that meeting on June the 16th, there is going to be a regional gathering, and this is something that I've been advocating for throughout my 8 years or 9 years on this committee, a regional gathering of all elected council members from all of the First Nations across the Metro region, as well as the Indigenous Relations Committee and the Metro Board. So Councillor Murray and I on June the 16th will be in Tsawwassen for what I think is a very important nation-to-nation type of meeting in terms of creating a road forward of reconciliation in the Metro Vancouver context. So those are my reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hanson. Would any other member of council like to make a report? Okay. All right, then we've completed the business of the evening. I will accept adjournment Moved by Councilor Murray, accepted. I just wanted to express our appreciation to staff for preparing the reports for tonight's consideration by council. Thank you very much. Also want to express appreciation to the members of the public who have joined us here this evening and keep themselves apprised of local government issues. We do appreciate it. Everybody have yourselves a fantastic evening. Good night.
I noticed your photo.